joyful as they bring. Love is all around, so let's protect what He gave us. Da 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 da.
Children cry out, why did you not act, see the facts when there was still time? To end our addiction, fossil fuel addiction, dependence and future existence, inventions. Activate, advocate, organize, stand up and join the resistance. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is threatening us. There's no other choice. Hear our children's voice. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science. Our political defiance. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science. Our political defiance. Sound the alarm, cause no harm. Storms and rising seas, drought, famines, floods could bring us to our knees. Warning, warning, sound the alarm, take action for humanity. Stop this insanity, get clarity, carbon neutrality. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is threatening us. There's no other choice. Hear our children's voice. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in
Hello.
People ask me what my secret is, I just smile and say, follow me. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Life's too short not to really live. I got a big heart, I can let you in. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. People ask me what my secret is, I just smile and say, live for today. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the sun came up and I gotta say, see it in a whole new way. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. On top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. On top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. People ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world.
All looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for And I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. Living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be free. Meant to be free.
Alright, magandang hapon, Pinoy climate reality leaders and environment advocates. Thank you for joining us today for the last episode of Klimatotohanan this year. This is our 21st episode entitled Fighting Back for the Planet, How Environmental Human Rights Defenders Are Risking Their Today for Our Tomorrow. I am Janine Vicente, a climate reality leader and one of the coordinators of the Ecological and Environmental Stability Cluster of the Climate Reality Project Philippines. Co-hosting with me today is my fellow climate reality leader and fellow cluster coordinator, Marian Cedeño. Hi, Marian. All right, let's catch up later, Marian. Isang magandang hapon
Yeah.
nandiyan na. All right, hi, Marian. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was
It's okay,
able to
yeah, go.
Yeah, isang magandang hapon po sa lahat na nakatutok sa atin ngayon sa Facebook Live. Hi! It is an honor to be co-hosting this episode with you, Janine. Para naman sa episode ngayong araw, pag-uusapan po natin ang isang critical na issue, the plight of our environmental defenders. International Human Rights Organization Amnesty International has defined environmental human rights defenders as people who speak up to protect rights associated with the environment, land, and territory. Karamihan sa mga environmental human rights defenders ay mga indigenous people and community leaders who are advocating to safeguard their rights and well-being, particularly through protecting their home, air, water, land, and territory, and forest as well from degrading or contamination. While many of their advocacies are focused on local problems, the work that they do have global implications.
Tama, Marian, our environmental defenders are true heroes on the ground, fighting for people's right to have a safe, healthy, and sustainable environment. Needless to say, the fight that they are leading is not without risk. Marami silang kinakaharap. Nandyan yung harassment, intimidation, arrest, criminalization, may mga namamatay din, at nakaka-experience ng sexual violence. Katunayan, ayon sa 2020 report ng Environmental Watchdog, tinatawag natin itong Global Witness. They have documented 29 Filipino environmental human rights defenders killings noong 2020. Dahil dyan, pumapangatlo tayo sa buong mundo na most deadliest countries para sa mga defenders ng ating land and environment. Ang nakakaungus lang sa atin ay ang Colombia at Mexico. Mamaya pag-uusapan natin, what are the primary drivers of these killings?
Yes, Janine. Akmang-akma ang usapin natin na to dahil ipinagdiriwang din natin ngayon ang National Human Rights Conscious Week pursuant to Republic Act number 9201. And we are lucky to have with us today an esteemed roster of resource speakers who will provide critical insights, insightful commentaries, and stories from the ground related to the challenges faced by our environmental defenders. But before we introduce them to you, nais muna namin kayong paalalahanan na meron ulit tayong Certificate of Participation para sa mga susubaybay sa ating episode. I-comment lamang po ang inyong pangalan sa comment section at kung saan kayo nanonood ngayon. Yes, go comment below. Also, if you have a question or questions for our speakers, please i-comment nyo lang din po para maitanong po namin sa kanila. Janine, huwag na nating patagalin pa, ipakilala na po natin ang ating guest ngayong hapon.
All right, Marian, let me do the honor of introducing our first guest, which is Mr. Leon Dulce. Leon is the current National Coordinator of the Kalikasan People's Network for the Environment, or Kalikasan PNE, a national grassroots-led environmental campaign center established in 1997. He represented the Filipino environmental defenders in the 2019 National Inquiry on Human Rights Defenders on the Commission on Human Rights. Furthermore, he served as a resource speaker, training facilitator, lobby and advocacy campaigner in national and international fora, conferences, and other gatherings related to environmental justice and environmental defender rights since 2013. He has written op-eds featuring environment, climate, and human rights topics for the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Rappler, Manila Today, and Buletlat. Hello, Leon. Maraming salamat sa pagpapaunlak sa aming imbitasyon ngayong hapon. And for a question, para ma-warm up naman tayo, bakit kayo lumalaban para sa ating kalikasan at karapatang pantao?
Magandang hapon. Parang yung tanong na para saan, para kanino ka ba bumabangon?
Yes.
Siguro kasi ako nasa kalikasan na ako for the past 10 years. Pero it was rooted in my upbringing. Yung mga magulang ko ay mga development workers, nagtatrabaho sa humanitarian response sa disasters, at doon maaga akong namulat tungkol sa usapin ng climate change, tungkol sa usapin ng environment as a factor doon sa risk ng mga disasters. Nung high school, sa Science High School ako, Quezon City Science High School, nagkaroon ako ng economics teacher na progressive at talagang tinatalakay sa amin yung mga social realities. And then, pagdating ng college, University of the Philippines, na-introduce na ako sa mundo ng aktivismo. So, doon na nagsimula yung involvement ko sa iba't ibang mga issues. Tapos, by 2011, sumapi ako sa Kalikasan as one of their youth organizers, and the rest is history. So, doon na nagmumula yung aking upbringing as an advocate for the environment. Tapos di naman ako tumigil ever since.
Right, I see. Naku, ang galing, no? Deeply pala yung yung parang foundation mo. So Marian, moving forward, kindly
Yeah.
introduce our next speaker.
Yes, salamat, Leon. No? Moving on, our guest speaker natin. Susunod na guest speaker, si Miss Victoria Tauli-Corpuz. Victoria is an indigenous leader from the Kankanay Igorot people of the Cordillera region in the Philippines. She is a social development consultant, indigenous activist, civic leader, human rights expert, and of course, public servant and an advocate of women's rights in the Philippines. So recently, she served as a UN special reporter on the rights of indigenous people. She was the former chair of the UN Permanent Forum on indigenous issue from 2005 until 2010. As an indigenous leader, she got actively engaged in drafting and adoption of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in 2007. Sorry. She helped build in the indigenous peoples movement in Cordillera as a youth activist in the early 1970s. She is the founder and an executive director of Tebtebba Foundation, Indigenous Peoples International Center for Policy Research and Education. Hi, Victoria. We're so happy to have you with us today. Kindly say hi to our viewers po. And just like Leon, we want you to briefly answer po the question, bakit kayo lumalaban para sa kalikasan at karapatang pantao?
Thank you very much. Thanks to Climate Reality Project for inviting me to speak dito. I think that growing up as an indigenous kid, I was always taught that you should be protecting your environment because you're part of it. You have to protect your lands and territories and resources because that is what identifies you as a person and as peoples, and therefore your obligation as a Kankanay Igorot is to protect this, not just for the present generations, but also for the future. So at a very early age, na-implant na yung ganyang pag-iisip at behavior at needed behavior to many of us by both our elders, our grandparents, of course, parents. And that is what we have been doing. No? As children, we know our laws, the customary laws that govern us whenever we relate with our environment. For instance, if we were to cut a tree, the obligation is to plant 2 or 3 more trees to replace those that you have cut, no? And if one obligation that we do is to also gather seeds, no, the seeds of trees in the forest, and also to the seedlings and to distribute it and plant it in the other parts of the forest. So that is how we were brought up. And of course, as an activist, I've seen how paano tinitake over, no, both ng government or ng corporations or ng politicians, no, ng landlords yung aming mga lupa, at without even obtaining our consent or even telling us to develop as either infrastructure projects to extract the minerals or the forest, the trees in the forests, among others. And that is what has made indigenous peoples fight back. No? And then in the process of fighting back, that's when we get the brunt of the state repression and persecution, in which many of our leaders are either killed or they are arrested or false charges are filed against them. So ganun yung cycle na nakikita namin, not just sa Pilipinas, kung hindi sa buong mundo. No, kaya meron din malakas na indigenous peoples movement all over the world, which are joining hands together to protect their own lands and territories and resources. In fact, for a long time we don't talk about environment. No, we talk about our lands and our territories, no, and our obligations and duty to protect these lands.
Maraming salamat po. This re-echoes the need na habang bata pa lang, kailangan minumulat na natin yung kaisipan about fighting for our rights, our environment. So with that, excited po kaming marinig pa ang kwento ninyo mamaya. Ang susunod naman po nating guest ay si Leon Torres. Leon Torres has more than a decade of experience in community research, education, and organizing. She is currently the executive director of the Center of Environmental Concerns Philippines and part of the Secretariat of the Asia-Pacific's Network of Environment Defenders. Magandang hapon, Leah. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Kayo po, ano naman yung take ninyo sa tanong na ito? Bakit kayo lumalaban para sa kalikasan at sa karapatang pantao?
Hello, magandang hapon sa lahat at salamat rin para sa imbitasyon. Ako naman, hindi ako lumaki sa probinsya, dito lang ako sa city. Ang exposure ko talaga sa environmental issues mas nung panahon na sumasama ako sa mga community integration nung nasa UP ako. Pati na rin pag nag-volunteer ako sa iba't iba pang mga organizations. Tapos dito ko nakita na yung mga tumatanggap sa aming mga community, sila yung pinaka nangangailangan, pero sila yung pinaka naapektuhan ng mga iba't ibang proyekto. Halimbawa, yung mga magsasaka, sila yung nag-aalaga ng lupa. Sila yung nagpapakain sa atin, pero yung lupa naman nila inaagaw at na-pollute. Yung mga mangingisda, sila yung pinakamahirap na sector sa bansa natin pero naapektuhan yung pangisdaan nila ng mga proyekto, halimbawa ng coal-fired power plant at nabanggit nga kanina ni Ms. Victoria na yung mga indigenous people, halimbawa, sila yung ilang henerasyon na inaalagaan yung kabundukan natin pero sila yung napapalayas dahil sa mining at iba pa. So mula dito nakita ko na yung paglaban natin sa kalikasan, paglaban natin para rin dun sa mga tao, lalo na dun sa karapatan ng mga mamamayan na pinaka-nangangailangan. Kaya mula dito nakita ko na kailangan talagang ipagpatuloy yung ganitong klaseng advocacy, lalo na sa Pilipinas na napakarami dun sa mga Pilipino, yung nasa mga lugar kung saan pinaka-apektado ng mga iba't ibang issue pang kapaligiran.
Yes, indeed. Oo, the answers are in the grassroots. Thank you so much, Leah. Our last speaker for our panel is Deign Frolley Soriano. Deign was a faculty member of the Department of Biology at the University of the Philippines, Baguio. He is currently a Chevening Salk Scholar taking his master's degree in environmental management at the University of Reading. He is a member of the National Youth Council of the WWF Philippines, campaigner for Save Philippine Seas, and the current representative of the biodiversity and environment sector to the United Nations Youth Advisory Board. Naman, welcome to our show, Mr. Deign. Salamat sa pagpapamulak sa amin ngayong hapon, sa pagpapaunlak ngayong hapon ng iyong presensya po. We also want you to answer this question and know your insight. Bakit kayo lumalaban para sa kalikasan at para sa karapatang pantao? Mr. Deign?
Hello, so good afternoon everyone. I think lumalaban ako kasi it's a concept that people depend so much on our environment, and as representing the younger generations and the future generations to come, we have a sole responsibility to take care of our environment. And given that we've been bragging how the Philippines is a mega diverse country in terms of biodiversity, in terms of natural resources, we have an obligation to protect it for future generations. So it's not just because, it's a scientific or it's a need for us to take care of our ecological resources because science would tell us so, but it's because a lot of communities, especially the underserved communities in the Philippines, depend so much on our environment and our natural resources. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Deign. Grabe, intro pa lang yan ha. Ang ganda na ng exchange and I'm excited to hear the rest of the episode. But before we proceed to the discussion, allow me to give a shout out first to our viewers on Facebook. Hello, Irene G. Buenavije from Laguna, Rice Duermo watching from Cagayan, Ezekiel Embiel from Caloocan, Rochelle Ramelo from Dumaguete, kamusta kayo dyan? Gemcy Angeo, watching via Facebook Live sa Antipolo. Gemcy Angeo sa Antipolo din. And good afternoon din kay Mary Ann watching from Aklan. Hi guys, thank you so much for tuning in.
Yes, thank you so much sa ating Facebook Live viewers. I hope mas marami pa sila. Just keep on commenting so we can shout out, give you shout out throughout this session. So, for the first segment of today's episode, we will put the spotlight on Leon para makilala pa natin talaga kung sino ba ang mga environmental human rights defenders at ang mga peligrong kinakaharap nila. Leon, I hope you can answer the following questions. Who are environmental human rights defenders? Tell us also about your work at Kalikasan PNE as one of the leading partners of Global Witness in documenting environmental defender killings. Please share with us the latest findings of your report. What does the report tell us? Lastly po, how can the general public support the work of environmental defenders? Leon, you can have the floor po.
Sige. Ang mga environmental defenders, ano sila any individual or groups of people, organizations who are practicing the defense or the protection of the what we call environmental rights, no? Right to air, right to water, right to land, etc. So this also includes the defense of the constitutional rights to a clean and healthy environment. So rights against pollution, environmental destruction, no? So they are operating usually in the context of where the exercise of these rights are being threatened or already being negatively affected. And actually, environmental defenders usually hindi nga sila explicitly or consciously nag-identify as environmental defenders. Tulad nung nasabi ni Ma'am Vicky kanina, ang mga katutubong mamayan sinasabi ay ang kanilang ipinagtatanggol ay ang kanilang lupa at ang kanilang kabuhayan, ang kanilang kultura. At ito directly nakaugat sa ating kapaligiran. No? So they may not necessarily identify as environmental defenders, but their concrete practice makes them as such. No? So they could be, indigenous peoples protecting their ancestral domains against large-scale mines. They could be the park rangers, no, protecting yung mga watershed areas where our forests, the last unaffected forests remain. They could be small farmers defending agricultural lands against land grabbing, against pesticides. Fisher folk opposing reclamation projects. Or actually even field scientists or experts, no, studying biodiversity for conservation or studying our landscapes and seascapes for conservation. So ang mga tanggol kalikasan, matawag mo talaga na sila yung mga bayani ng kalikasan. They are the frontliners in the struggle for environmental and climate justice. No? Environmental defenders collectively protect 80% of all of the world's biodiversity, no? Yung saribuhay, and 80% of the world's food production. A study, in fact, demonstrated na in over 3,000 documented na mga environmental conflicts, no? Pinakita nung study na ito na environmental defenders played a decisive role in the successful defense of the environment against destructive projects in 11% of these cases. Tapos kapag yung mga tanggol kalikasan daw nabigyan ng iba't ibang forma ng suporta, this could actually rise to up to 25% success rate. So tunay na kabayanihan talaga ang binibigay ng mga kalikasan ay ng mga tanggol kalikasan. Doon naman sa tanong na tungkol sa what we do, no, what our work is in kalikasan. So ako, I'm the national coordinator of this campaign network, as you explained earlier sa intro, and I coordinate the various aspects of Kalikasan PNE's work across the country. So this includes building people's movements for the environment, building broad alliances based on various ecological issues, conducting education and research, especially among the grassroots populace, engaging in communication strategies, lobbying and advocacy, international solidarity work, and so on and so forth. No? So Kalikasan PNE was given its mandate in its founding Congress in 1997, composed of national, regional, provincial, grassroots federations, such as federations of indigenous people, farmers, fisherfolk, workers, and also alongside associations and NGOs of scientists, development workers, health workers, church workers, and the like. So the mandate was really to ensure the coordination and complementation of the environmental campaigns of these various sectors and geographies. So kunyari, common struggles, for instance, of indigenous people, small farmers, even some small-scale miners, the rural poor, we hope to unite them and coordinate them and raise their struggles up to the national and international level. So, yun, kaya ang slogan ng Kalikasan, the struggle of the people is the struggle for the environment. Kung gusto natin ipagtanggol ang kalikasan, kailangan nating tulungan na magtanggol ang mamamayan para dito. So, yun ang Kalikasan. Should we continue ba doon sa tanong on the latest findings sa Global Witness?
Yes po, go ahead po.
Okay. Sige. So, taon-taon naglalabas yung Global Witness ng report on the documentation of land and environmental defender killings. It focuses on killings kasi ito yung tinatawag na sharpest point, no, of the stick. Ito yung pinakamatindi na human rights violation that an environmental defender can experience, no? The loss of life. Pero ang sinasabi nga nila palagi, may caveat, it represents an even wider and harder to document situation of impunity. Yung sabi nyo nga, iba't ibang forma ng abuso ang naranasan ng mga tanggol kalikasan bago pa to humantong sa pagpatay. No? In 2020, Global Witness recorded 227 murdered land and environmental defenders, the most in a single year. No? And this averages for more than 4 defenders killed each week. Linggo-linggo, 4 ang pinapatay sa buong mundo. So this really makes it one of the most dangerous years on record for people working to protect the environment. Ang particular na observation ng Global Witness sa data nila, 70% ng mga cases na recorded were on record, no, documented kung ano yung issues na ina-address, no. 70% were working to defend the world's forest. And we know forests are one of the primary ecosystems, not the only one, but one of the primary ecosystems that serve as our natural carbon sinks and very crucial, very critical para doon sa reduction ng mga greenhouse gas emissions sa ating atmosphere. Therefore, very crucial to address the burgeoning climate crisis. They also noted that 30% of the documented attacks were linked to resource exploitation. Ibig sabihin, pinatay sila para doon sa mga likas yaman na matatagpuan sa kanilang mga teritoryo o lupa. So logging, mining, large-scale agribusiness, and other related na infrastructure such as hydroelectric dams, reclamation, etc. No? So it all has to do with resource exploitation and land acquisition. Ang sabi nila, 30% is likely to be higher kasi in some or many cases, hirap na ma-document yung exact na paper trail between the case and the projects na nandun sa lugar. No? Tapos in 2020, nagpatuloy daw yung trend na one of the most disproportionately affected kinds or types of environmental defenders ay yung mga indigenous human rights defenders, indigenous peoples. And they comprise over 1/3, no, of all fatal attacks that target defenders in that year. No? Tapos Pilipinas ang isa sa mga tampok dyan, kung nabalitaan ninyo, noong bago matapos yung taon, yung massacre ng mga katutubong tumandok sa Panay. No? Philippines was indeed the third deadliest country on record in 2020, and we are Asia's deadliest for the 8 years running. No? So very, very concrete situations of impunity. Yung walang kapananagutan doon sa pagkitil ng buhay ng mga tanggol kalikasan. No? So I think yung mata-take away natin dito, kahit na gloom and doom yung yung situation na hinaharap natin. The fact that environmental defenders are facing unspeakable dangers is precisely because their heroic actions are really making an effective difference. No? It really shows na ang pagtanggol ng kalikasan is crucial. You will see that we environmental defenders are serving as the first and last line of defense in crucial areas of struggles, no? Such as large-scale mining, logging, agribusiness. These industries are affecting the people's access to such basic, no, such fundamental needs as water, food, shelter, jobs, livelihood, no, and even the resource base for our industries, no, industries that we do not have yet in the Philippines. So with this, we are really up against powerful interests, no, mga malalaking negosyo, mga corrupt na mga politiko, and therefore the recognition, protection, and support for the rights of environmental defenders. Make it or break it factor yan. Kung gusto natin makamit yung climate justice, kung gusto nating ma-ensure na yung iba't ibang mga krisis ng planetang hinaharap natin, no? Yung mass extinction events, ecological collapse, yung mga zoonotic na pandemic, yung mga resource curse sa ating mga bansa na ang yaman sa likas yaman pero nanatiling mahirap. No? Yung mga krisis na yan, susi na ma-ensure na nakakapagtanggol ang mga makakalikasan ng mga tanggol-kalikasan para ma-resolba ang mga problema ito. So I think that in a short discussion ang kahalagaan sa lipunan ng mga tanggol-kalikasan.
Grabe, damang-dama ko yung passion ninyo. And thank you so much, Leon, for that presentation. You've clearly framed the current climate for environment human rights defenders. And clearly, those who are fighting in the trenches are not safe until the government gets serious about protecting the defenders. And also, yung mga kumpanya, they have to start putting people and planet before profit. So, Marian, what do we do next?
Yes, Janine, no? Mabigat, first speaker pa lang natin, no? Yes, Janine, as mentioned, most environmental human rights defenders are our indigenous brothers and sisters. Kaya naman, sa susunod na segment, we will talk to Victoria about the work that they do at Tebtebba advancing indigenous rights. Victoria, here are our questions that we hope that you will answer through your presentation. What are the different issues and challenges confronting indigenous environmental activists at the local and global levels? Can you tell us po about your work at Tebtebba? Why is it important, Tebtebba po, why is it important to recognize and respect indigenous rights in our fight against climate change? Victoria, you have the floor po.
Yes, okay, maraming salamat. Well, ang dami-daming challenges na nami-meet ng mga indigenous peoples, no, in their effort to protect their environment, their lands and territories and resources, and their cultures and identity. No, we always say that when we talk of lands and territories, that we are also talking of keeping indigenous people, keeping the cultures and the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples, so that they will continue to protect their environment, no, and of course this one of the main reasons on why they're doing this is yung kanilang belief nga, yung kanilang value na you have to live in harmony with nature, and if there are some actions that are taken that destroys, you know, this harmony and this relationship, then of course you have to protect and fight back, no, and so yun ang isang challenge talaga. Maraming tao hindi naniniwala sa ganyan, no? Ang tingin nila, ang papel ng tao ay to dominate nature, to exploit nature for their own advantage, at ang pinakamatinding representation yan, syempre yung mga corporations na ang tingin nila sa nature is it's a thing that they should exploit so they will earn more profit. No, kaya yung ganung worldview, yun talaga ang isang malaking challenge. Paano mo papalitan yung ganyang pagtingin, at paano mo rin papalitan ang behavior ng mga consumers, yung mga nag-consume ng mga produkto galing sa pag-exploit ng nature, para mas magiging active partners sila in ensuring that these products are obtained in more sustainable ways and more socially friendly, no, and human rights friendly ways, no. Kaya yung yun ang unang nakikita kong challenge, yung mindsets, yung behaviors, yung discrimination that continue to exist in the minds of course in state institutions, in their laws and policies, but also in the minds of some of the dominant populations, so in which they think that indigenous peoples are backward, they are not scientific enough, and they don't know how to take care of their environment, so others have to take over, no. So those discriminatory and racist behaviors and attitudes really have to be addressed. And then thirdly, of course, yung criminalization and persecution, no, of indigenous peoples who are defending their environment. As was mentioned earlier, 1/3 ng mga pinapatay na environmental human rights defenders ay indigenous peoples, ano, all over the world. And I've seen this. When I was a rapporteur, I went to Mexico, I went to Colombia, and I did make a report, a very particular report on the criminalization of indigenous peoples. And when you look at the report, ang talagang isang main reason kung ba't ganyan ay dahil nagpro-protect ng karapatan itong mga tao sa kanilang pinoprotect nila ang karapatan nila sa kanilang mga lupain at ayaw nilang matuloy yung mga proyektong nangyayari sa kanilang mga lupain. Halimbawa in North America, I've also went to the US, I did a visit there. I talked with the ones who were fighting against the pipelines, no? The gas and oil pipelines that were being established in their communities, even if they can prove na talagang yung mga areas na yun are culturally sacred, no, to them, and yet the government and the oil companies don't care, no, about that. So yung ganung pagprotect is something that, as I mentioned earlier, it's both the right of indigenous peoples. They have the right to a safe and clean environment, and that's a basic right, no. And so they are fighting for their rights to live in an environment that can protect them, but also which they can leave behind for the future generations. As we know, meron yung 7th generation framework din ang IPs na kung buhay ka, ang iyong responsibility is to make sure na yung lupang iiwanan mo, yung environment na iiwanan mo is something which is better for people 7 generations ahead of you, no, behind you, no, who will live after you. So yun mga ganung pag-iisip ay talagang pinaperpetuate namin, tuturo namin to our younger people, and of course we live by it. And one of the things that you also see is that yun nga, imagine 30%, 1/3 of the pinapatay ay indigenous people, samantalang indigenous people sa buong mundo ay only 5% of the total world population, no. Ganun kaliit ang kaya nga disproportionately affected ang indigenous peoples, no. Tapos so yun ang mga big challenges. How do you stop these perpetrators of human rights violations and bring them into account? Because most of the states, all of the states, they have signed on to the most important international conventions to protect civil and political rights and economic, social, and cultural rights, as well as environmental rights, no? And so Tebtebba, my institution, that is what we do. We raise awareness ng mga indigenous peoples, ano yung mga karapatan nila. We advocate from the local up to the global level para ma-assert nila itong mga karapatan nila at mas strengthen ang capacity nila to protect their environment and to pursue their own indigenous people's self-determined development, no. Dapat ang indigenous peoples, they should be allowed to define what is the development, what kind of development should take place in their communities, no. And since 1996, that was the year that Tebtebba came into being, we have been doing this, and the main focus of our work is really the empowerment of indigenous peoples at the local level, no. But we bring their issues up to the global level, and so we have been involved in developing international instruments for the protection of indigenous peoples' rights. Active kami sa Climate Change Convention to make sure na yung references to protect the rights and the knowledge of indigenous peoples on how to adapt and mitigate climate change are also supported. And finally, we of course fight against the human rights violations, no? Yung mga killings, yung mga criminalization, displacements, we engage in campaigns to put a stop to this and to provide justice to the victims as well as to the perpetrators, no? So in a nutshell, ganun ang aming ginagawa at hopefully and we are doing this not just in the Philippines but in the world. No, we are an international organization, so we have partners in many countries in Africa and Latin America and in Asia, and that is we have a movement and a group of people whom we are training and also bringing to the areas where they can advocate for their rights.
Yes, thank you so much. No, personally like hearing from you, preserving the environment means keeping the culture and living in harmony with the environment. Also, I certainly agree that indigenous peoples or the people in the grassroots should be involved in knowing or having what development should be done in their land kasi they are the ones in the community and living there, no? And also indeed changing the mindset of the people, the government and big companies is indeed a continuous struggle up until now. So thank you so much, Victoria. And before we proceed to the next segment, here are a few reminders. Janine?
Yes. Galing talaga nung nakaraang topic, no. Ang progreso ay kailangan makataot ng halikasan. So here's my reminder. This year's COP26 is an eye-opener on the need for young people to actively participate in climate discussions and collectively use our voice to push for genuine inclusion and representation. That's why Kids for Kids, Project Pulo, and the Climate Reality Project Philippines is inviting Filipino youth to join our open thread about climate policy in the Philippines. Now more than ever, we need to understand how our leaders and policymakers will be moving forward and ultimately bring climate justice for people, planet, and the Philippines. To join the Telegram group, you may scan the QR code and go to the link flashed on your screen. Our discussions here will remain non-partisan, but of course, on the side of climate justice for the most vulnerable communities always, and with the indigenous people and local communities as the true climate leaders of our town. Salamat.
Yes, the youth cluster invites all young environmental and climate advocates to submit proposal to Project Niche 2.0. Project Niche was first launched in July of this year to inspire and empower the Filipino youth to become the key players in community-based climate actions. It produced several projects and campaigns that aim to solve a local climate or environmental problem. As we continue to help the winning teams of Project Niche last July, we open the call once again to build, embodying the young climate advocates who are interested to hone their ideas for climate action in the fields of, we have 6 fields, 7, agriculture, 2nd, water, 3rd, environment and ecology, 4th, human security, 5th, energy, 6th, transportation, and 7, smart cities and industries. One winning team will be chosen from each of the 7 above mentioned sectors. So one of those sectors po. Each winning team will receive up to 20,000 seed money for implementation. So what are you waiting pa? All interested participants are required to register at the link flashed on your screen. So please register. The registration will run until 31st of December 2021. Friday po, 11:59 p.m. So again, one winning team will be chosen from each of the 7 above mentioned sectors. So go na! Attention to all Pinoy climate reality leaders as well watching. Join the Klimatotohanan production team and help us produce the show. So the Klimatotohanan webcast is a venue for dialogue among Pinoy climate reality leaders and other climate advocates to deepen each other's understanding, of climate change, no? And help each other take bolder climate action. So let's, I don't know, join in. Siyempre, at part of the production team, as part of the production team, you will be able to hone or even discover your skills and talents. May it be hosting, writing, or designing. If you are unable to join the production team, connect with us on social media and share the episodes on your account. So go, go, go na po.
Ako, sali na po kayo dyan. Join the hashtag Klimatotohanan production team. And okay din yung, yung contest na Project Niche 2.0. Kaya naman sa ating mga isa-shoutout ngayon, sali na po kayo. Like kay Mayan Pastrana, watching from Banga Aklan. Hello. And kay Lexine Ross from Bicol. Ivan ng NUST. And kay Rose ng Hilado Memorial State College. Miro Ditan, watching by FB sa Masbate. Hello, good afternoon din kay Diana Ignacio ng Nueva Ecija. Kay Cristal, watching from Pampanga. Kay Chris Bagay from Binyan, Laguna. Kay Maricel, watching from Bukidnon. And kay Angelica ng Apayao. So hello po sa inyong lahat.
Yes. Hello, hello everyone, no? So nakikinig sa amin. So yes, Janine, ngayon naman we will call on Leah to discuss efforts to support environmental human defenders in the country. So Miss Leah, please help us answer the following questions po. What are examples of violence taking around the country against environmental human rights defenders? What are the ongoing efforts and activities of the Center for Environmental Concerns Philippines in supporting them? What are the best ways for ordinary folks to support them po? Miss Leah, you can have the floor po.
Okay, thank you, Marian. Nabanggit na kanina na isa talaga sa pinakamalalang atake sa environmental human rights defenders or environmental defenders ay yung killings or yung tinatawag natin extrajudicial killings. Ang isang tampok dito yung nangyaring massacre ng mga tumandok indigenous people nitong nakaraang December 2020. Sila ay mga komunidad, miyembro ng komunidad na tumututol dun sa katayong large dam sa kanilang lugar. Pero labas sa pagpatay, marami pa talaga iba't ibang klaseng pag-atake. Kasama na dito yung pag-aresto sa mga environmental defenders batay sa mga false charges o yung tinatawag nating strategic lawsuits against public participation as SLAP suits. Isang halimbawa dito yung sinampa kay Dato Jomorito Guayon o si Dato Jumong ng Kalumbay, Regional Lumad Organization ng Northern Mindanao. Siya at yung 16 activists na nahuli rin ay kaka-drop lang ng charges nila nitong nakaraang linggo. Dito napatunayan na hinuli sila, ngunit wala namang batayan yung kanilang kaso. Marami ring kaso ng harassment, threats at intimidation kung saan iba't ibang pamamaraan ang ginagawa para takutin ang mga environmental defenders. Halimbawa nito sa lugar ng mga indigenous people sa Nueva Vizcaya, kung saan nandun yung operasyon ng Oceana Gold Philippines, isang mining operation ng matagal nang nangyayari doon at na-renew pa ang permit, yung mga community leaders nila nakakatanggap ng death threats. So dahil dito, marami sa kanila yung napipigilan sa pagkilos nila sa community, pero marami pa rin naman yung hindi talaga nagpapa-apekto dito at patuloy pa rin dun sa kanilang environmental advocacy. Isa naman din sa pinakamalalang nangyayari ngayon, yung tinatawag nating red tagging. Malamang narinig nyo na siguro yun. Ito yung tinatawag na pagbabansag dun sa mga individuals at organizations na mga terorista, mga rebelde o mga komunista. At ito ay ginagamit na justification, no, sa susunod sa iba pang mga atake sa kanila. Ang isang halimbawa na lang nito, mismo kami, ang CEC, ay na-red tag ng dalawang pagkakataon na dahil daw kami ay isang communist front. Ngayon, sino ba ang nagre-red tag? Di ito ang ating gobyerno, particularly yung NTF-ELCAC or yung National Task Force to End Local Armed Communist Conflict. So ito NTF-ELCAC, sila yung nagsasabi na itong mga individual organisasyon na to ay mga terrorist front. Anong ibig sabihin nito para sa environmental defenders? Napakadelikado nito dahil nakikita natin na yung mga inaaresto at mga pinapatay, sila yung mga previously na red tag. So itong trend na ito sa Pilipinas, nakaranasan ito na hindi lang na environmental defenders, pati na mga journalists at iba-iba pang mga sektor. So isa ring recently na lang na nangyari ay yung enforced disappearances o yung tinatawag nating desaparecidos. Ito yung mga kaso na nababalitaan na lang na nawawala ang isang human rights activist. Pero meron tayong mga balita na alam natin kung sino yung kumuha pero hindi pa rin sila nakikita. Nitong nakaraan lang na November 6, yung isa kong kaibigan galing sa UP, siya ay dinakip at hanggang ngayon hindi pa rin nakikita. So siya ay isang organizer sa mga farmers, among the farmers para sa kanilang land rights. Isa siya sa mga nag-iaktibo sa paglaban sa deforestation sa Central Luzon, pati na rin sa pag-ensure na sustainable agriculture sa mga komunidad doon. Pero hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin siya nakikita. So itong trend ng palalang mga atake at paraming kaso, ito yung ito ay concerning para sa amin ngayon. Dahil meron tayong sinisikap na harapin na tinatawag na nga nating climate crisis. Pero paano natin to magagawa kung mismo yung mga tanggol kalikasan ay inaatake? So kami sa CEC, kahit kami mismo ay inaatake, kami ay nakikisa dun sa iba pang environmental defenders sa Pilipinas. So isa sa mga ginagawa namin ay pagkakaroon ng mga immediate services or support services. Halimbawa na lang ay kapag meron kaming nabalitaan na nangyari o kaya may local community organization na nagpapatulong sa amin, kami ay umuugnay sa kanila sa iba't ibang human rights mechanisms katulad na lang ng UN, yung tinatawag nating UN Human Rights Mechanisms. So mahalaga rin makapag-report sa United Nations kasi meron din silang mga pamamaraan maaaring tumulong sa pag-iimbestiga o pagtulong doon sa paglabas ng panawagan na gumawa ng aksyon para sa isang kaso. Labas pa dito, nagkakaroon rin kami ng mga solidarity or fact-finding mission. Meron din kami inilunsad na legal consultation sessions kung saan yung mga komunidad ay binibigyan ng legal advice kung paano pwede pakitunguhan yung iba't iba nilang nararanasan. Meron din kaming inilunsad na psychosocial debriefing sessions dahil syempre sa dami ng atake, malaki talaga ang trauma nito sa mga environmental defenders pati na rin dun sa mga pamilya nila at sa komunidad nila. So labas pa dito, meron din kaming mga capacity building activities katulad ng security training. Meron din kaming mga modules na inilalabas. Nakasama na doon ang paralegal training. Paralegal, ibig sabihin, ano yung mga legal mechanisms na pwede mong gawin para mag-prevent ng attacks o kaya kung merong attacking gagawin, ano yung pamamaraan para magdokumento, magsa-dokumento nito at iba pa. Meron din kami syempre yung mga information education campaigns, mga videos, infographics, social media posts, at yung meron kaming inilabas na National Situation Environmental Defenders last year. So itong nilabas namin publication na ito, hopefully ma-update namin siya at mailabas annually. Kung in terms of advocacy, gusto rin namin patapukin yung environmental defenders sa buong Pilipinas, yung kanilang mga inspirational stories dun sa aming nilulunsad na Gawad Bayani ng Kalikasan. So ito ay isang environmental awards kung saan yung mga mismong grassroots community leaders ang hina-highlight namin dito. So ito yung inisyatiba namin para rin ipakita na napakalaking kontribusyon ng environmental defenders. So ginagawa itong Gawad Bayani ng Kalikasan every 2 years. So naghahanda na kami para dun sa aming GBK 2022. Meron din kaming tumulong rin kami magbuo ng tinatawag na Environmental Defenders Congress. Ito yung first National Alliance na Environmental Defenders sa Pilipinas. So mahalagang hakbang ito para mapagkaisa ng environmental defenders para makapagbuo ng mga konkretong solusyon at sama-samang gumawa ng pamaraan para maabot ito. Tapos, meron din kaming, tumulong rin kami mag-draft ng tinatawag na Environmental Defense Bill. Ito yung tinutulak nating maisabatas para magkaroon ng mas maraming proteksyon dun sa mga environmental defenders. Kasi sa ngayon sa Pilipinas, wala talagang batas partikular sa pagtatanggol dun sa environmental defenders. Nakita natin na isa rin siyang kahinaan kung kaya't marami pa rin na nagpapatuloy ng mga atake sa environmental defenders. So yun yung, kung sa bahagi na CEC, yun yung ginagawa namin kasama ang mga lokal na komunidad at saka iba pang mga organisasyon, iba pang national organizations. Kami rin naman ay naniniwala na kailangan, depensa natin yung environmental defenders dahil sila ang, at batay na nga sa tawag sa kanila, di ba? Ay pinaglalaban nila yung kapaligiran natin. Nasa Constitution mismo yun ng Pilipinas na bawat Pilipino may right to a healthy and balanced ecology. At ang UN, Human Rights Council, dineclare na rin na fundamental right ang access to a healthy and sustainable environment. So, yung environmental defenders, pinagtatanggol nila yung karapatan natin yun. Ngayon, alam naman na natin na napakahalaga na maging malusog yung kapaligiran natin, katulad nga na nabanggit nyo kanina, dahil dun sa lumalalang climate crisis, di ba? Yung Philippines, isa siya sa pinaka-climate vulnerable countries. Nakita natin yan, taon-taon, lumalala yung mga bagyo, lumalala yung mga tagtuyot. Kung sa atin yan, sa mga cities, parang nakikita lang natin siya na parang baha. Pero kapag nandun tayo sa mga komunidad mismo, halimbawa sa mga bukid na natatabunan talaga ng tubig yung mga taniman, naapektuhan din tayo nun dahil yun rin ay pagkain na nawawala rin para sa atin. So parang kung makita natin, malala na yung kalagayan ng Pilipinas, lumalala ito dahil sa mas matinding pagkasira ng iba't ibang ecosystems. Tapos yung nagpe-prevent pa na gawin yun ay inaatake. So yun yung halaga na dapat tingnan natin. Hindi sila basta-basta mga parang mga tao na nasa malalayang lugar. Sila mismo yung pinaglalaban ng karapatan natin at kabutihan natin kahit nasan man tayong bahagi ng Pilipinas. Doon nga sa, nabanggit niyo rin kanina yung COP26, di ba? Or yung climate change negotiations na kinoconvene ng United Nations. Sinabi mismo doon sa outcome document nila na kailangan natin palakasin yung protection, yung conservation at rehabilitation ng environment dahil ito yung papataas ng ating adaptation at mitigation para dun sa lumalalang climate change. Kailangan natin, para maabot yun, ng iba't ibang stakeholders, kasama ang indigenous people at local communities. Sila yung mismong nasa front lines. Kaya mula dun, parang tinitingnan natin na hindi, internationally recognized naman na ang pangangailangan na protektahan yung environmental defenders. Pero kailangan natin mas magkaroon pa ng concrete solutions. So ano nga ba dapat yun? E di una sa lahat, kailangan natin magkaroon ng accountability. Sino nga ba yung perpetrator? Sino yung mga gumagawa nitong iba't ibang forma ng pang-aatake? Kailangan natin sila panagutin. Kailangan natin magkaroon ng mga investigation sa mga kasong nangyayari. Tapos, kailangan rin natin magkaroon ng mas malakas na protection mechanisms para ma-prevent yung pag-atake. So, yun nga, kasama nga dito yung pagpapasa natin ng mga batas na makakaprotekta sa kanila. So, parang mula doon, hindi lang to inisyatiba dapat ng environmentalists o environmental advocates. Ito ay dapat pagtulungan ng lahat ng mamamayang Pilipino dahil lahat naman tayo ay malaki magiging pakinabang kapag pinangalagaan natin yung ating mga tanggol kalikasan. Salamat.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Liano. Indeed, kasi it is very heartbreaking yung patuloy na pag-atake sa ating mga indigenous community leaders and not the indigenous community as well. So, yun nga, I saw a documentary, no, nakita ko yung ilan lang sila, parang 7, 10 lang sila na nagdedepensa nung isang rainforest dito sa Pilipinas, and they are risking their lives, literal na risking their lives, at ilan na din ang napatay defending their land and defending the forest. So no, hindi minority sila, hindi sila masyadong naririnig, pero ang laking tulong at ang laki ng papel nila sa kalikasan. So yun po, Miss Leia, if you don't mind, I have a follow-up question lang po. Kasi na-mention niyo po yung desaparecidos, kasi it's my first time hearing po. May hakbang na po ba para sa mga nawawalang miyembro po or mga individual na nawawala yung organization ninyo? Or may mga nawawala po bang individual na nakita na at nakuha po ba ang mga may nakuha po ba or na-interview po sila? Also, yung publication po na i-release ninyo, is it online po and is it free? Accessible po ba sa atin sa web? Miss Leia?
Okay, thank you for the question. So, yung binabanggit ko kaninang friend ko, ang pangalan niya siya si Steve Abwa. UP student siya, alumni pala siya. At hanggang ngayon, di pa rin siya nakita. Ang ginagawa na ngayon ay nagkahanda na mag-file ng writ of amparo para hanapin siya. Nakapag-communicate na rin sa Commission on Human Rights tungkol dito at umaasa na magkaroon pa ng patuloy na investigation para dito. Yung cases kasi ng disappearances sa Pilipinas, diba, parang panahon pa ng martial law, nangyayari na to. At yung sunod naman na napakaraming kaso na yung sa panahon ni President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo at kahit ngayon sa panahon ni President Duterte. Most of the time talaga hindi naman natin nakikita yung mga nawawala eh. Sa pagkakaalam ko, parang yun, mas meron din 2 pang estudyante ng UP kung naaalala natin, 'di ba? Si Sherlyn Cadapan at si Karen Empeño na nawala nung panahon ni Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo na hanggang ngayon hindi pa rin nakikita. So siya, kaya may ibang sakit din ng kaso ng desaparecidos eh. Dahil di mo man lang malalaman kung ano na ba talaga yung nangyayari sa kanila. Marami pang kaso niyan sa probinsya na yung mga lugar talaga na hindi naaabot ng media. Marami pang ganyang kaso na hindi na-report. Kaya tingin ko kailangan talaga ng mas matinding investigation at human rights monitoring para malaman talaga natin yung sitwasyon. Dun sa pangalawa, yung ilalabas namin report, lahat ng publication namin ay free. Lahat ito ay makikita sa website namin. So, open ito sa lahat. Pwede ko namang i-share na lang sa inyo.
Yes.
Pag lumabas na. Salamat.
Yes. Oo. We are very happy siguro na makita or ma-receive yung copy ng anyong report. And yes, indeed, kasi I have a schoolmate din yung president ng aming university. I'm from UP Mindanao na napatay din noon, no, nawala, nawala, tas napatay din siya nung nakita na. So, yun nga po, it's a very sad thing na na-experience ng ating indigenous community. So, naku po, Leah, thank you for your continuous call for the protection of our environmental defenders. But we are not yet done. Di pa po tayo tapos. We will get back to all our speakers later. For now, Janine, what do we have next po?
All right, abangan natin ang publication na yan. Up next, our special guest who will serve as a reactor is none other than Deign. So, Deign, what can you share about the previous discussions? Do you have any personal experiences that you can share when it comes to the threats that the environmental defenders are experiencing in our country?
and good evening, I think, or good afternoon there in the Philippines. So, ang dami kong notes, to be honest. Ganyan ako dedicated sa
Oh, ang
ginagawa
ganda
ko.
ng
But
topic.
the thing is, I'm currently doing my master's in environmental management, and it's solely based on technical know-how, understanding the science behind climate change, understanding environmental degradation. And a lot of the courses, a lot of the modules that I'm currently taking are highly scientific, highly technical. But with this particular discourse, um, it it is a reminder that environmental concerns, problems that we face in terms not only of the Philippine environment but of a global scale. It's not just a scientific or not just an environmental concern. It's also a socio-political, it's an economic, it's a cultural issue, and it affects us all. Lahat ng tao sa Pilipinas man yan or in other countries, especially the developing countries all across the globe, lahat ng inaapektuhan. And sometimes I do have debates with my classmates, since most of my classmates here are, living in first world countries. So, I had this environmental law class before, and they were talking about climate change emissions. And since I'm in the UK right now, di ba nga, the COP26 was held in Glasgow. So I was, a train ride away to Glasgow. Pero hindi ako nakapunta, but some of my professors were able to attend the COP26 personally. And, I've also heard remarks and issues about our representation as a country, as Philippines in COP26, and how it lacked participation from other sectors involved in the climate change or the climate crisis discourse. And reflecting on these issues, environmental issues are cross-cutting in terms of agriculture, in terms of food security, of health, of human rights. Lahat ng yan cross-cutting and interwoven, and in terms of the rights of people. And going back, yung debate na yun, I've always asked them, how do we then make countries like, say for example, United States or the United Kingdom, or very developed countries, accountable for the actions that they do and the emissions that they contribute to developing countries like my country, the Philippines. Very big countries dump their waste in the Philippines. If you know that issue in 2018 or 2017, ginawa tayong basurahan ng mga malalaking bansa. Emissions, greatest emitters of greenhouse gases are big countries. The worst plastic polluters are big countries. And it took me that courage and leap of faith to ask them inside the class, even my professor who's a national of this country, to where's the accountability? How do you then make yourselves accountable for the things that you're doing and contributing to developing countries like us, the Philippines? And it's always us, the poor countries, quote unquote, taking the blame and the big chunk of responsibility to protect our environment, simply because tayo daw yung nagpo-pollute, tayo daw yung gumagamit ng mga resources. But in reality, tayo naman yung nasa front line of protecting what we have. So, yung economic, yung cultural, yung socio-political, yung ecological perspectives of tackling climate or environmental issues, ang dami niyang naapektuhan. Whether you're young, whether you're old, regardless of your class, regardless of your ethnicity, all of those are related. And that's one thing na dala ko every time I study. And as a youth, it's not just trying to understand the environment on a technical know-how or on a technical basis, but rather trying to bring in the plight of people, especially those that are underserved and are mostly affected by, you know, environmental problems. And going back to the question nga kanina kung bakit ba tayo lumalaban, simply because people are dependent so much on our environment. From the moment you wake up, from the water that you drink, from the food that you eat, lahat ng yun nanggagaling in our environment. And I think people forget how harmoniously or intertwined in that greater scheme of things. In terms of experiences, binaon ko na to before sa limot, pero I've always anchored myself on this experience. So in 2019, I think this was in July or 20, I'm not quite sure kasi kinalimutan ko na siya. But in 2019, we had this research. It was a research, it's a scientific research because I'm a biologist and ecologist by training. I presented together with my professor, yung head namin. We presented a research on the importance of trees in Baguio City because that's where I live for the past 9 years. So baka nakita na kami once in our lives ni Ma'am Vicky. So some of my colleagues as well and friends in UNYAB in the UN Youth Advisory Board works for Tebtebba as well. So I presented the research, and then after presentation, so this was in the city legislation, so mga councilors with the vice mayor ganyan, so they were asking if kailangan bang i-ban yung or if they should impose a moratorium for the cutting of trees. Baguio City is known for pine trees, ganyan. So pag sinabi mong Baguio City as the summer capital, I want to go there because it's cold and there's a lot of trees, but in reality papaubos na siya, it's dwindling in terms of its number. So we presented the research of how important are remaining green spaces in Baguio, since ang lala na ng urban sprawl. And then after presentation, I've received 2 death threats from unknown people. Hindi ko na rin alam kung sino sila. Wala pa rin akong pagkakakilanlan kung sino sila. And I was scared. Parang kasi people, yun meron tayong sense of heroism and sense of like, yung messianic complex na we tend to like, we can do and we can protect the world since very noble yung cause na ginagawa ng mga tanggol kalikasan, mga environmental defenders. But in reality, as someone who experienced that particular trauma of being red tag, of receiving death threats, it was scary. As in, pati nanay ko, pamilya ko, napadalhan ng death threats. So I was scared for them as much as I'm scared for my own life. So I wasn't going out for like 2-3 weeks. So nag-file na ako sa police, ganyan. So there was fear. So instead of like me, trying to study what I love, what I'm passionate about, which is the environment. Kasi yun naman talagang ginagawa ko, and that has been my training for the past 5-6 years. It was scary for me to continue environmental work at first because, at the age of like 20, I was 24, 23 back then. Tapos makakatanggap ka ng death threat, not only for you, but for your family. It was scary. And I am not part of any indigenous community, but I live in Abra, which is another province in the Cordillera Administrative Region. And medyo during elections day, medyo malala yung election-related violence din doon. But it's a common theme in the Cordillera na meron talagang nawawala, dinadakip, pinapatay, and it's a very frustrating and it's a saddening situation because wala naman ako personally, ginagawa ko yung work na ginagawa ko because that's one way of giving back and paying it forward to the people who supported my education. And I think doing environmental work fulfills that, way of giving back. But it's scary to pursue it all at the same time because, there's a threat in your life. Hindi naman siya biro. Parang ang noble cause nga siya. like teaching and all that. But receiving a death threat it's not a laughing matter, kumbaga. So hindi siya biro. So for me, naglaylo ako in any engagement. I wasn't, I canceled speaking engagements. I wasn't going to my office. So hindi na talaga ako lumalabas, hindi ako nakikipagsalamuha because I was afraid, but also I was concerned of the people around me. I don't want others get affected by what's happening. And I'm just one particular, environmental worker in my region, in my city. And nangyayari to, again, nabanggit na to nila Lian, ni Miss Vicky, ni Leon, na ang dami ring cases ng EJ case, red tagging, ang daming abuses sa ating mga environmental defenders in different places in the Philippines and in the world na hindi na-document kasi hindi na-release ng media. I was lucky because the next few days, my story was published in a city newspaper. I was in the front page, in a front article in Rappler. I was even, retweeted by Miss Maria Ressa, our recent Nobel Peace Prize laureate in the Philippines. So people were made aware of my situation, and people in my circle, faculty members in UP Baguio where I work, yung mga nasa part ng Union dahil nasa Union din ako before. Kilala sila actually ni Miss Vicky kasi nasa isang circle nga. And other people in my environmental affiliations were concerned for my well-being. But at the same time, I was also thinking, environmental defenders and youth leaders, siguro ika-count ko pa rin yung sarili ko, and other youth leaders across the country, now that we're taking space, and related na rin to the question, parang how would the youth support environmental defenders? It's high time that as youth members, as Filipino youth, we own and take our space in these discourse and in this particular issues na nakakatakot talaga siya. In hindsight, we feel like napaka-noble ng cause, but in reality, it's frightening. But we have to continue because I've taken my inspiration and my passion because I was affected. My mom and my siblings had to, work in a nursery, raise plant seedlings for me to go to college. So for me, working for the environment is a way of protecting the people that I care about, and also trying to build that sense of responsibility to other people na hindi tayo dapat mahirap kung pinapangalagaan natin yung resources natin. Wala dapat magsasaka, mangingisda, mahihirap na. Wala dapat mahirap yun. And for a country with abundant, land and water resources, ang dami nating isda, ang dami nating forest sa pwede nating pagkuhanan ng pagkain, ang dami nating resources in general. Dapat walang nagugutom na pamilya, walang nagugutom na Pilipino. And I think it's going back to the core of environmentalism, which should be anchored and founded on class struggle. I know I've mentioned this to my students before because I was a teacher in UP back then in the Philippines. And I've always mentioned that environmentalism is a class struggle. And environmentalism without class struggle is plain old gardening. Parang ka lang nagtanim ng halaman sa backyard mo. And environmentalism, is a class struggle kasi you have to really carry the plight of the most affected people on the ground. And that's, yun yung inspiring sa work ni Miss Vicky, sa work ni Leah, sa work ni Leon, because it's all on a grassroots level, but they're trying to elevate and scale it up for, environmental issues to be heard of. Malapit na election, and we've been hearing platforms of candidates in the national positions, but rarely you encounter politicians who talk loudly about their platforms for the environment and environmental defenders. And I've used my platform for, asking, sino ba yung mga tumatatakbo para sa election natin that are interested in and that are concerned and will have, projects and initiatives directly related to our environment. Because again, it's a cross-cutting facet of us being Filipinos and for us, living in the Philippines. So, again, it's class struggle. Kailangan nating i-acknowledge yung idea na every individual, every Filipino should have a say in fighting for the environment. And we have to somehow remove that barrier. And personally, I've always adhered to the idea that we have to remove that barrier of exploitation, of consumerism, and of capitalism. Kasi ang dami nating, ang dami ng nasira na ecosystems, ang dami na nasira na habitats in the Philippines. In Cordillera alone, alam nila yan, na mahalaga for the identity of indigenous communities. And it's not just about identity, but sustenance of the people living in those areas, in those environments. So it's a class struggle, and we need, as much as we have grassroots leaders like Leon, Miss Vicky, Leah, who are working on the ground 24/7, protecting the rights of people and protecting our environment. We also need leaders who are, responsible and can be accountable for, protecting our environment and always pushing for the rights of our people and our environment at the very front. Hindi yung palaging profit lang or dahil gusto nating palakasin yung relations with other countries. Kaya yan, binibenta na natin lahat ng resources natin. And I know this is a non-partisan event, yes. But ako, personally, I won't, and people should not stand in a place of neutrality because that reeks privilege. So, palaging nasa harapan natin yung karapatang pantao and also protecting the rights and privileges of people, especially the underserved. Kasi sila naman talaga din yung mostly affected by the environmental issues and problems that we face. So if we put that in the very front lines of trying to protect our environment, you also forward yung karapatan ng mga tao natin, yung mga karapatan ng bawat individual in the Philippines. So yeah, yun lang naman for me for now. Thank you.
Deign, thank you so much for sharing this very personal experience na talagang makita natin yung realities of the environmental defenders. And with that, thank you for echoing what's on the ground and representing the issues sa high level. Gusto ko yung isa sa notes mo na yung rights natin, yung concerns are interwoven. All the more we should fight together and support leaders and rally with them in advocating for social justice. So, hello, Marian, your thoughts?
Yes, Janine, thank you so much. No, I really like the advocating for environment without class struggle is just like actually parang backyard gardening, because indeed, no. Well, thank you so much, Deign, for a really wonderful insight. But we need more of those because we are now starting our open forum. So where we will read questions from our viewers. To all our viewers on Facebook, please send in your questions po. So, Janine?
All right. So, once again, thank you so much sa lahat ng mga speakers natin ngayon. Thank you for doing what you are doing. And sa mga viewers natin, please send your questions. And mamaya, pipili tayo ng mga lucky questions na matatanong. But for now, what specific actions are we demanding from the government to ensure na mapoprotektahan talaga yung human rights ng ating mga defenders? Anyone can answer?
I can provide an initial answer. Basically, the government really needs to protect these defenders. As you know, the government has ratified a lot of these conventions, no, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, in which they are not supposed to torture people, to arrest people illegally, to displace people, no, lahat ito ay mga rights contained in that particular human rights convention na niratify ng gobyerno natin. Kaya sila ang duty bearer ng rights, sila ang human rights duty bearer, at sila dapat ang nagpo-protect ng rights na yan. Kanya lang hindi nila ginagawa, di ba? Kaya ang kailangan dyan, i-educate talaga itong gobyerno, ang mga government officials, ang military, ang police, na hindi pwede yung ginagawa nila na basta na lang nag-arrest arbitrarily, pinapatay. Ang mas kinaano ay, we all know that yung mga pinapatay, halimbawa yung recent na pinatay na doktor sa Cagayan de Oro by unidentified men in motorbikes. Sino ba ang nag-promote ng ganyan kung hindi yung may mga political interest na gustong sikilin ang protest or ang people who are exposing the truth, di ba? So tingin ko yan ang number one na i-demand natin sa gobyerno, na itigil nila yung ganyan. Tapos of course we know for a fact that now the government is going to be subjected to international investigations. Kaya we need to use these international mechanisms to make the government people, the politicians, the government officials more accountable. No, it is their duty to protect basic human rights of people and the collective rights of indigenous peoples. Secondly, we need to campaign, no, to advocate widely, to bring this to the attention of the media, to get justice operators, to, the Commission on Human Rights, the judges and all, to know about this, no? Kasi we encourage people to bring the cases to the courts because that's the only way that we can get at least a modicum of justice. Of course, it's not as if mayroon ganyang justice, pero for instance, yung pag-overturn nung kaso, yung false charges against those leaders in Mindanao, against yung Dato, ganyan, yan ang mga ilang examples na justice will come for as long as there are people who are really persisting and in demanding justice and demanding the human rights duty bearers to do their role. And finally, it's also important to really educate ourselves, no? Kasi yun nga yung sinasabi halimbawa ni Deign na natakot siya. Ganoon naman ang normal na feeling ng anybody who is subjected to such kinds of terrorist, yung so-called anti-terrorist laws, no? And we need to campaign against these laws that are repressive, that are illegal, and that are unjust. Dito mga yung anti-terrorist law sa Philippines, very clear na talagang hindi human rights sensitive yun. Tapos yung LCAC program na yan, ang kailangan budget. Dapat lang talaga sinusuportahan yung hindi pagbigay ng budget sa ganyang klaseng mga operations ng gobyerno. So to start with, yun ang mga basic things that we need to do. And we need to ask the politicians, especially now campaign period na, no? So kailangan tanungin natin yung mga tumatakbo, ano ba ang posisyon nila sa mga issues na ito? No, para kapag nanalo sila and they are in power, then we will know na these are the things that we will na isisingilin natin sa kanila kung hindi man nila ginagawa ang kanilang ipinangako. Alam mo naman ang mga politiko, ipapangako nila ang buwan sa iyo at lahat, na pagdating nila in power, wala na silang pakialam. No, so I think it's really the accountability and that needs to be stressed very strongly, and we have to get this from our politicians, our decision makers, and of course even the private sector, no, itong mga korporasyon at saka mga agribusinesses na nandito sa bansa natin at saka sa other countries, like for instance this Chinese effort to get to deprive us of our rights over our seas. No, you really need to speak loudly against these kinds of actions that are totally against human rights and sovereignties, no, of countries who are supposed to be self-determining. So yun ang mga ilang nakikita kong kailangan gawin.
Yes, thank you so much for your insights, Miss Victoria. For the Sir Leon, I noticed that you were trying to answer earlier. Go ahead po.
Sige, pero sinabi na ni Ma'am Vicky, halos comprehensive na yung sagot eh. Naubusan ako na isasagot. Pero yung idadagdag ko siguro, nabanggit nga ni Deign kanina, it's a crucial election period. Crucial dahil pivotal eh. Yung mailuluklok sa darating na eleksyon ay mailuluklok sa isang mapagpasyang panahon. Yung maliit na window ng climate action, di ba? We have less than a decade to take drastic action para sa climate justice. Para sa Pilipinas, ano yan, usapin ng adaptation, usapin ng pagtiyak ng sapat na finansya galing sa mga polluter countries and corporations para suportahan tayo dahil sa mga dinaanan nating losses and damages. No? Tapos nasa panahon tayo ng protracted na pandemic na alam natin nanggaling sa pagkasira ng kapaligiran dahil zoonotic in nature yung pandemya ito. Meron na tayong Omicron variant. So crucial yung election dahil yung decisive leadership sa darating na 2022 onwards ang haharap dyan sa mga sabay-sabay na krisis na yan. Kaya kami naglunsad kami ng kampanya na na nag-raise ng pledge na ang mga mamamayan maging active citizens for the environment and people and planet sa darating na eleksyon. Ito yung panatang luntian. So pledge tayo dapat na ang boto natin ay boto para sa kalikasan. Itiyakin natin na mapakinggan tayong mga botante na nananawagan para sa agenda na magtitiyak ng ating pagpapanumbalik ng ating lipunan, ekonomiya, planeta ng mas makatarungan, mas luntian. So agenda for a just and green recovery yan. Importante yan kasi ang isang nakakalimutan sa usapin ng karapatan ng mga tanggol kalikasan, isa sa mga ugat niyan ay yung mismong environmental conflict, yung resource conflict na hinaharap nila sa komunidad, hinaharap nila sa kanilang teritoryo at lupa. So kailangan hindi lang yung pagprotekta sa kanilang karapatan, kundi ina-enable din ang mga tanggol kalikasan na epektibong maipigilan yung mga mapanirang proyekto. So part ng Just and Green Recovery dapat ay moratorium sa mga mapanirang proyekto na nabanggit na natin kanina, yung pagsira sa West Philippine Sea, yung mga dam, yung mga mining at iba pang malalaking proyekto. At dapat magkaroon ng sapat na pondo ang gobyerno, ang subsidyo para doon sa mas lunti ang mga industriya, no, naglilikha ng mga mas lunti ang mga trabaho. So, tingin ko yung panatang luntian na agenda, pwede nyo naman bisitahin sa website namin para makita pa yung detalye. Isa siyang crucial na ikampanya sa darating na eleksyon at dapat pakinggan ng mga, lalo na ng mga nasa mga presidential at senatorial na mga candidates, no? Hamon sa kanila na pakinggan na itong agendang ito dahil ito na yung crucial na panahon na planeta naman ang pakinggan.
Thank you so much, Sir Leon. Tama. Boto para sa kalikasan, voting for the politicians that have the environmental consciousness, not just the traditional politicians who it doesn't care anything about the environment. So for the next question, we have this question. No, anyone can answer pa rin po. The need to defend our right to a healthy environment is rooted from the lack of awareness of people in power on the critical role of the environment to real development. How are we going to help build a culture where people and planet are considered more important than profit? Anyone can answer po? Who would like to go first po? Yes po.
Ako
Yes,
rin,
Miss Lee.
coming from the discussion a while ago, nakita naman natin na ang nagiging root na attack sa environmental defenders ay yung nagaganap na resource conflict. Yung marami yung nag-i-interest sa natural resources ng local communities o ng Pilipinas para sa profit at hindi naman talaga para sa local and national development. Nakita na natin yan sa iba't ibang industries katulad sa mining, sa plantations at iba pa. Tingin ko hindi talaga magbabago yung ganitong klaseng culture kung yung framework din ng ating government, ito rin yung sinusunod. Kasi kung ganito naman yung parang nakikitang itsura ng development para sa kanilang mata, ito yung susundan ng ating mga batas at programa. Ngayon, yun nga yung sinasabi natin, kailangan natin ipakita yung ano ba talaga dapat yung pagtingin natin sa environment o sa natural resources. Ito ay para sa kapakinabangan talaga ng mga mamamayan. Hindi ito para lang sa iilan na malalaking negosyo, ilang individual lang sa ating bansa. Tingin ko mula pa lang dun sa pagpapalit mismo ng orientation natin, kung paano natin yun nauunawaan, yun rin yung magbabago rin ng pagtingin natin dun sa pagpapahalaga dun sa pangangalaga sa kapaligiran, pati na rin dun sa mga tanggol kalikasan. Kaya parang palagi natin naririnig to sa mga discussions, no? Na parang sinasabi na system change, not climate change. Kasi yung nararanasan natin ngayon, rooted siya sa isang sistema na sinasabi nga bulok, di ba? Or yung itong capitalist system na profit-driven ng lahat ng bagay. Inuuna yung profit bago sa kapakanan ng mamamayan. Kaya tingin ko, yun yung mga mahalagang i-highlight din natin sa ngayon. Thank you.
Okay lang,
Yes,
dugtungan ko kaagad.
Yes po, go ahead po.
Kasi tulad na paliwanag ni Leah, very complex at actually overwhelming yung mga problemang hinarap natin, di ba? Mga malalaking sistema sa politika, sa ekonomiya, sa lipunan. Tapos nakakatakot, tulad ng sabi din, nung kami, yung red tagging sa amin itong mga nakaraang taon, nakakatakot. Yung threat na i-raid yung office namin, nakakatakot. And I think yung ganong klaseng overwhelming na sa senses natin yung problema, yun yung unang-una nating dapat basagin eh. Una sa lahat, kailangan para makita na may lugar natin sarili natin na mapangibabawan yung takot at yung hesitation na mas maging vocal at mas maging active doon sa pagtatanggol ng kalikasan. Kailangan natin makita na hindi tayo nag-iisa. Una yan eh. Maraming ng survey nagpakita na 60% ng mga Pilipino involved yan sa iba't ibang forms of environmental conservation, sa tubig, sa pagtatanim ng mga puno at iba pa. 80% ng mga Pilipino ay conscious na sila ay personally affected ng climate change. Pero yung level of appreciation nila ay hindi pa nasa level na ito yung magiging primary nilang usapin. Kailangan nating maipaliwanag sa publiko, sa lahat ng mga constituents natin na yung usapin ng environment, climate, gut issue yan. Kailangan natin mapakita sa kanila na nakadugtong yan doon sa mga pinakamahalagang mga values at saka needs nila, no? Pagkain, tubig, 'di ba? Hangin. Tapos pangalawa, kailangan nating na mapakita sa kanila na yung dami natin, kung sama-sama at kung mas koordinado, mas sistematiko tayong kikilos para sa mas matataas, no, bigger and bolder actions, kaya nating pangibabawan yung mga banta, kaya nating pangibabawan yung mga risks, no? At yung mga challenges ng pagtatanggol ng kalikasan. Marami ng kaso yan na yung mga banta halimbawa doon sa aming opisina, doon sa aming mga miyembro, doon sa red tagging, na-dispel lahat yan noong ang daming mga volunteers na tumungo doon sa office namin, tumulong na mag-vigil para bantayan yung opisina namin, bantayan kaming mga at threat na mga environmental defenders. Nakakataba ng puso at kapag tingin ko, makita ng lahat ng mga may pagmamahal para sa kalikasan na hindi tayo nag-iisa at mas malakas yung laban natin kung sama-sama tayo. Tingin ko walang imposible doon sa ating ginagawa.
Ang ganda po na, no? Mas masarap lumaban na alam mong hindi ka nag-iisa. So, with that, para naman po kay Ma'am Victoria, what can you see about the current policies when it comes to protecting Indigenous people's community? And are they enough? Do we need more? And how do we safeguard their rights?
I think Miss Victoria already left for another meeting, Janine. So
sige.
we can ask the other speakers.
Siguro just to add, since we're talking about policies, kami naman din, working with Indigenous people's communities, we've seen the many flaws of existing policies, no? For example, the Indigenous People's Rights Act or yung IPRA law natin, na supposedly ay mag-protect ng rights ng ancestral lands ng ating mga Indigenous people. Maraming communities rin yung nakakita na nagagamit rin ito sa maraming pagkakataon para makuha yung lupa sa kanila. At na marami rin cases na hindi talaga natutuloy yung tinatawag nating free, prior, or informed consent na dapat ay ibinibigay ng mga indigenous people bilang bilang sila ay nagmamay-ari ng ancestral domains nga nila. Kaya tingin ko malaki pa yung aralin natin tungkol dun sa kasalukuyang batas natin dyan. Yung isa rin talaga dun sa mga bagong programa ngayon na naka-apekto, so hindi lang sa indigenous people, kundi sa lahat ng environmental defenders, yung nabanggit ko nga paglilikha ng NTF-LCAC. I-reco ko lang yung sinabi kanina na kailangan talaga mag-defund or mag-abolish ng ganong klaseng mga agencies na talagang masasabing personally affected kami dito sa ginawa nila, at pati na rin sa napakaraming communities na nakasama namin. Isa siyang malaking sayang sa pera ng sambayanan at redundant agency, no? Ngayon, para naman sa bill na tingin namin na dapat ipasa, nabanggit ko kanina ito, yung Environmental Defense Bill. Ito ay na-file na sa Congress noong December 2020. So, nandyan na siya, tapos na yung bill. At naghihintay na lang siya ng pag-usad. Alam naman natin, medyo mabagal yung pagpapasa ng mga batas sa atin. Pero nandito sa Environmental Defense Bill, yung pag-secure ng access to justice ng mga environmental defenders. Ibig sabihin, paano yung kanilang legal counsel o iba pang legal needs nila kung sakaling may mangyari sa kanila. Access to information tungkol dun sa mga proyekto na nag-involve sa kanilang mga communities. At increase na protection sa kanilang public participation at iba pang mga mechanisms para ma-ensure na maaari sila magpatuloy dun sa kanilang advocacy work. So yung bill na yun, mahalaga rin na mag-create tayo ng mas mataas na kaalaman na meron tayong bill na ganito na maaaring itulak. Mahalaga rin na masuportahan ito dahil mas malaking public pressure or clamor para sa isang batas, mas malaking posibilidad na mapasa yung batas. Kaya hinikayat nga rin namin or hinihingi rin namin ang support ng lahat ng environmental advocates na suportahan yung Environmental Defense Bill. Isama rin natin to dun sa ating electoral green electoral platform o sa ating pananampalatayaan na i-challenge din natin yung ating mga kongresista na kung kayo ay talagang gustong maalagaan ng ating kalikasan, natanggol kalikasan, ipatupad rin natin itong Environmental Defense Bill. Salamat.
Thank you so much, Miss Lia. Gusto ko yung yung sinabi mo yung tungkol sa April Law na kami sa line of work namin, kapag kami ini-introduce kaming development sa community, kailangan muna naming tignan kung kung may consent ba dun sa mga IPs, kung okay ba sa kanila doon, ano yung mga kailangan naming i-consider before pushing for the project. And sana maisabatas yung tungkol po dun sa mga human rights defenders nating environment. Now, Marian, you have a question for Deign?
Yes, Janine, we have additional questions for Miss Lia again. Unahin na lang muna natin kasi siya na din yung nagsasalita para diretsohan na lang Miss Lia, we have a question. You went to COP26 po and joined the civil society in actions outside the negotiation halls of the COP26. What can you say po about the people's movements respond to the outcomes of the COP26? Do you think po we are reaching the social tipping point where a large mass of people are actively pushing for climate justice?
Thank you. Dun sa COP26, isang na-observe ko talaga doon, una sa lahat, marami sa mga grassroots or community-based na environmental defenders ay hindi talaga nakapunta. Kahit sa mga kakilala lang namin dito sa Philippines, kahit sa ibang bansa, dahil kami rin ay secretary ng Asia Pacific Network of Environment Defenders, isang regional alliance or international alliance. Marami talaga environmental defenders doon na hindi nakapunta. Pero sa mga nakilala ko sa iba't ibang events doon, makikita natin na marami rin talagang mga na-attend ng mga meetings, yung mga civil society organizations, kung saan hindi sila natuwa dun sa naging resulta ng mga napag-usapan. Labas dun sa napakahirap mag-attend ng events, merong limitations yung number ng participants dahil daw sa health protocols. Pupunta ka dun sa Glasgow para lang manood ng meeting sa cellphone mo kasi hindi ka na makapasok sa meeting. May mga meetings talaga na ako napuntahan na alam ko ay baka nandun din si Tauli-Corpuz na consultation siya ng COP26 Presidents Indigenous People kung saan nag-raise ng concerns ang iba't ibang Indigenous people sa iba't ibang bahagi ng mundo na pinapatay na yung mga kasamahan nila. Anong gagawin ng presidency tungkol dito? Isa ito tanong na hindi talaga nasagot. Ngayon, maraming ganong sitwasyon na dahil hindi napapakinggan yung mga environmental defenders dun sa spaces, sa mga meetings, makikita mo na dinadala nila yan sa maraming side events at outside events. So, yun yung makitang positive na naidulot nun dahil mas nagiging active yung mga tao dahil nakikita nila na may lack of action. Actually, kahapon, meron lang kaming report back webinar ni Leon tungkol sa COP26. Kasama namin yung iba pang mga Filipino, hindi lang pala Filipino, iba-iba pang mga nationalities na pumunta sa COP. Marami talaga hindi masaya dun sa resulta ng COP26. Labas pa sa usapin ng napakababa ng target sa carbon mitigation, adaptation, financing, at marami-rami pang iba. Kung sa usapin ng environmental defenders, hindi talaga pinag-usapan ang environmental defenders issues. So, kung makikita natin, among ourselves, tayo mga environmentalists, tayong may alam na ng issue, nakikita natin parang ang dami nang lumalahok dun sa movement for climate justice dahil ang environmental defenders' rights ay nasa sentro naman ng environmental justice or climate justice. Pero sa totoo lang, tingin ko, kailangan pa rin natin ng mas maraming suporta. Dahil mas parang masasabi natin, minority pa rin tayo sa populasyon ng buong mundo. Kailangan natin ng mas maraming tao na may alam sa issue na to at mas maraming tao na mag-support ng advocacy. Actually, isa sa mga realization ko dito sa ating webinar ngayon, parang madalas natin binabanggit na yung environmental defenders as third person. O parang hindi ba tayo environmental defenders mismo? Lahat tayo, si Deign, si Leon, ako. Di ba, nakaranas na tayo ng iba't ibang forma ng atake, red tagging, di ba, harassment, threat ng raid, di ba, parang tayo mismo, nararanasan na natin yun. So, tingin ko, kailangan natin mapakita rin sa mga tao, mapaunawa sa mga tao, lahat tayo environmental defenders. At tayo rin mismo, kahit na nakikita natin, marami na tayo, mas marami pa yung kailangan natin para sulang talaga ng tunay na pagbabago yung inaabot nating climate justice. So feeling ko, historically, lumaki na tayo yung nasa climate justice movement. Pero of course, there's still more to be done.
Yes, Jenny.
Ganda ng realization niya, Marian. Parang the title itself is so big, but if we look onto it, it's a way of life and how we do things, how we support the movement towards social justice. So, yun. Yung question na natin kay Deign.
Yes, please.
All right. So, one of the things that climate movement is pushing for is a green and just post-pandemic recovery. How do we ensure the measure placed in the recovery plan will not harm the rights and welfare of our environmental defenders? Deign?
Grabe, nakita niyo kung gaano ka-cross-cutting yung issue. So there's human rights, there's environmental protection and all that. Pero even if tanggalin natin sa picture yung environmental protection, ganyan. Basic kasi in terms of rights and welfare of any individual would be able to participate in any kind of discourse. And I think yung discourse na yon, taking into account the rights of people and the rights of our environment, it should be meaningful and it should be just. Yung socially grounded and socially aware na participation of people. I think a lot of the conversations, like for example in COP26, may term kasi kami right now here, yung decolonizing certain, discourses and spaces and we want to decolonize yung idea that environmental problems are to be solved by, leaders and big corporations. Sila dapat yung hindi natin pinagsasalita kasi sa totoo lang, sila naman din talaga yung contributory sa pagkasira ng environment natin in particular. So, again, going back nga sa sinabi ko kanina na we really have to occupy our space as environmental defenders, as responsible individuals. At, we're Filipinos and we're so proud, and, we've been bragging about the Philippines and how amazing and majestic our beaches are in the Philippines, gaano kaganda yung mga kabundukan natin. Pero we have to walk the talk din at the same time. And I think yung walking the talk would be just, maybe youth participating in spaces and their voices being heard by legislators, even at the local or even at the grassroots scale. Hindi man kailangan sobrang engrande. It should be just, based, socially aware, talagang just. And most of the time kasi yung mga policies na linalobby talaga ng people working at a grassroots level or on the ground level, sila usually kasi yung grounded with what's happening at the very lowest scales. Sila yung grounded on reality. And talking about, post-pandemic recovery, ayaw na natin ng green rhetoric, ayaw na natin ng puro salita. Gusto man natin yung mapanindigan ng leaders, legislators natin na someday taken into account yung karapatan natin bilang tao and karapatan natin for a very healthy environment since we're living in the Philippines. So, ayun.
So, yes, thank you so much, Deign, and thank you all to our speakers for being with us today. And I wish we have more time, no? And but then we are very thankful for everyone involved dito ngayon sa ating session, sa ating Klimatotohanan, the 21st natin na session. Sobrang dami naming natutunan mula sa inyo. We face the truth that's happening on the ground. And medyo mabigat talaga yung discussion. Pero ang mapag-usapan ito ay kinakailangan. Very important yung discussion na to for awareness, no? Hindi natin pwedeng tawagin ang mga sarili natin na climate and environmental advocates kung tayo ay magbubulag-bulagan sa mga kinakaharap ng ating mga environmental defenders. Well, actually, environmental defenders din tayo. No, we hope that this webcast episode will serve as a springboard of future collaborations and partnerships among our organizations, no, and with different organizations as well, and LGUs. Kaya maraming salamat po sa inyo, sa ating mga speakers and sa ating mga viewers. Kaya maraming salamat po. Before we really end this episode po, once again, taos-pusong pasasalamat din po sa ating mga viewers for supporting the Klimatotohanan webcast series. Grabe, 21 episodes na tayo, no? Magbabalik po kami next year. Abangan po ninyo. Pero sa ngayon po, dahil ito po ang last episode natin for 2021, sadly. But binabati na rin po namin kayo ng Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Enjoy your holidays with your loved ones and with your family po. Jenny?
Nako, ako din, excited na ako sa mga susunod pa nating Klimatotohanan. But before we end, let's have, parang tanungin na rin natin yung mga speakers natin. Can you please share a brief inspiring message to our viewers na babawinin natin sa pagtatapos ng taon at sa pag-welcome sa 2022? Leon?
Sige, salamat Janine, maraming salamat sa mga tagapanood natin, no, sa Klimatotohanan. Siguro ang masasabi ko na lang, tulad ng masabi ni Lia, tayong lahat ay mga tanggol kalikasan. So yung usapin ng ako mismo ay magiging makakalikasan, tayo mismo dapat makita natin na iisa ang planeta natin, nagkakaisa tayo dito sa pagtatanggol ng ating common home, di ba? Kaya sana ay makita pa natin na mag-move forward pa tayo at higitan pa yung nagagawa na natin ngayon para sa ating iisang planeta, sa ating iisang tahanan. So,
Maraming
continue
salamat,
the struggle.
Leon. Oh, thank you. Leon, you have something to share with us?
Siguro ano lang, para lang di rin natapos yung discussion natin na malungkot tayo. Siguro gusto ko lang din ibahagi na mahalaga rin talaga na baguhin natin yung narrative tungkol sa environmental defenders, no? Hindi tayo mga kaaway, hindi tayo mga terorista. Tayo ay mga tanggol kalikasan. Mahalaga yung ating papel sa pamangalaga ng kalikasan para sa pagtatanggol ng karapatan ng mamamayan. Kaya hindi tayo biktima, tayo ay malakas dahil tayo ay sama-sama. So yun lang, maraming salamat.
Ang ganda nun hindi tayo biktima at tayo sama-sama. And Deign, you have something to share with us?
Na-overwhelm ako sa mga sinabi ng mga tao.
Ang powerful, no?
But for me, I've learned this from one of my mentors before. It's time for revolution, and not just any other revolution for that. So social revolution, ecological revolution. But when you look at the word revolution, the second, third, fourth, and fifth letters of the word revolution, when you read it in reverse, it's love. And, love for your country, love for the environment, and love for the people that you really care about. Yun dapat yung angkla ng revolution na meron tayo in the Philippines. And I think, doing what contributes to the world will be, a very, very great aspect that we should do as Filipinos. So yun lang.
Usapang pag-ibig. So, yeah, I'm also speechless with all this message about joining together and how powerful we could be. So, Marian, meron ka bang last thoughts that you'd like to share to our viewers?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Janine. Siguro as a young leader as well in my community, I am very inspired sa ating mga speakers, no? And nakita ko yung importance ng class struggle talaga and pakikinig sa mga grassroots, lalo na we also have indigenous communities here in Lanao del Norte, and one of my advocacies talaga is reaching out to them. And my main siguro main challenge for the upcoming na mga elected officials or politicians is to have the environmental consciousness. Kasi nakikita ko din na sobrang hindi nila naririnig yung boses ng mga indigenous communities na meron kami dito, no? And yun lang, thank you so much. Baka ikaw, Janine, meron ka din ma-share, and maybe we can share our social media platforms as well.
Ay, tama. So, yun nga pala, regarding dun sa social media platform natin, don't forget to follow Climate Reality PH sa Twitter and Instagram. So, i-flash yung sa screen natin or siguro dun sa chat box. And kanina yung na-share ko, one is coming together, respecting rights, and acknowledging that magkakaugnay tayo yung kanta. So, it's very basic, deep, and at the same time, yun yung reality natin. So, with that, katulad ng pagbati mo, advance Merry Christmas, maraming salamat po sa kabaon na ito. Para naman po sa mga nagtatanong tungkol dun sa Certificate of Participation, kindly answer the feedback form. And there.
Yes, thank you so much. Again, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you everyone for participating. This has been Klimatotohanan, a webcast organized and led by climate reality leaders to tackle the urgent climate issues of today and tomorrow. Why Klimatotohanan? Because we need real talk and real action on the climate crisis. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat at magandang gabi po. God bless you. Bye-bye, Janine. Thank you.
Bye. Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy New
Merry
Year.
Christmas.